lovely introduction. Well, first of all, welcome to Connected Us. Listen to me. Welcome to KPFK. You know, I feel like the luckiest person in the world. I'm preceded by Amy Goodman. I'm going to be followed by you. Who gets lucky enough to be in a sandwich like that? My question is this. You said initially that we have to really pressure anyone that we elect as president to understand, if I can paraphrase you, that the takeover of our economy, really our world, is happening through corporations. And we have to put pressure on our present president to make him understand that. I hate to sound cynical, but we are looking at a president who just selected John Brennan as head of the CIA. We're talking about Dr. Strangelove here. And the question is, how realistic is that? And in case it's not realistic, to try to pressure this president who, at the very best, is a political schizophrenic. What is our next best unified move?
Thank you, Lila. Thank you for your show. I've been a guest on your show. It's a long issue. When Franklin Roosevelt came into the White House in 1933, he was facing a major Occupy movement. Literally, the Bonus Army was camped out from the lawn of the White House all the way down to the Potomac River. And I'm not sure that it was that day, but it had been in the very recent past. Herbert Hoover had sent Eisenhower and what's his name, the guy from the Pacific Theater? Yeah, MacArthur, thank you. Through there with their tanks. A couple of people had died. They burned out the Occupy movement was alive and well back then. And they were mad as hell and they weren't going to take it anymore. And Americans were speaking out and standing up and Roosevelt had this. He also had almost a luxury that Obama doesn't have. Two of them actually. One was that he had more than a 2/3 majority in both the House and Senate. But another one, and I think perhaps more importantly, is that communism was alive and well. And there was an active Communist Party in the United States. And fascism was alive and well. And there was an active fascist party in the United States. You see the old videos of the Boons, you know, and the guys with their Nazi salutes and the whole bit, you know. And Roosevelt got it that he had to thread the needle. He had to figure out a way to save capitalism itself, to save the republic. And that these two things were perceived as threats. I don't think that the modern Occupy movement, there was so much hope. I was such a, but it seems to have kind of lost a lot of its steam. We can have a long discussion about why that happened, but I don't think it's all that productive right now. And communism is dead. In fact, the modern incarnations of communism are Fidel Castro, who's starting to do micro-capitalism, and communist China, which is eating our lunch. And they're really only communists in name. It's really state capitalism, which, by the way, is what Mussolini called fascism. So we have a president who doesn't have those external pressures that Roosevelt had, and he doesn't have the internal pressures that Roosevelt had, and that concerns me. I get these people who I go on these right-wing talk show hosts, or they come on my show and they go, "Oh, you crazy lefty," and I'm like, I'm a lefty, And finally, after years and years of listening to this, I got on the president of the Communist Party of the United States, CPUSA. How many members do you have? 324. It's like I call myself a democratic socialist, as does Bernie Sanders, and I'm for a regulated capitalism and a lot of communalism, a lot of what they're doing in Argentina and Brazil and in some of the European countries where worker-owned cooperatives, Mondragon, is the whole. We did our show from Mondragon. In fact, the last chapter of my book Threshold is about that cooperative. So I think that there's all these economic models out there, but I don't see any of this stuff creating an enormous amount of pressure for change on the president or on the Congress, which is why I think we're muddling through. And eventually one of two things is going to happen. Eventually either the takeover is going to be more or less complete, and we're going to have basically a lost generation, and I think we might be in the middle of it right now. And the system will become so oppressive and economically oppressive as well as politically oppressive that it'll eventually collapse of its own weight. And then the people will essentially rise up. Or we're going to continue to entertain ourselves to death and just kind of slide into something where those of us who still remember what America was once like have just died off, and something will reboot it, but it won't be that, and I'm not sure what it is. But my personal sense of it is that the thing that's going to cause the crash. Let me preface this by saying something really interesting. What was really interesting to me. Larry Beinhardt, who's a screenwriter and a novelist, observed that in American history, whenever the top tax rate, the top marginal tax rate, is over 50%, you do not have bubble economies. And when it's below 50%, you do have bubble economies. And you know, we had this very, very stable economy. The 50s, 60s, 70s, and were the only 3 decades in American history where we had GDP growth of over 3.2% every single decade, and a strong and solid and growing middle class, and the top tax rate was 91 to 74%. And then Reagan came along and dropped it down to 28%, now it's up to 39%, it's still below 50%. And we've been having bubble economies ever since Reagan. It's been a series of bubbles. The most recent bubble was the housing bubble. The bubble that I think that is preparing to burst right now is the student loan bubble. And even though they saw this coming, and in fact, I got a Democratic senator who won't come on my program anymore because of this back 4 or 5 years ago when they were debating this, and I said to this person, you know, this is just wrong. You should not exempt student loan debt from the bankruptcy laws. I mean, these are, if anybody needs protection, you know, Henry Ford, you know, said anybody needs protection from making a mistake or getting in over their heads or kids. And beyond that, you know, when I went to college, I was working at a job that paid $2.35 an hour as a DJ. My wife worked her way through school working as a waitress at Howard Johnson's. I didn't know people who ended up with student debt unless they were doing graduate degrees. You know, if they were getting their MD, then yeah, they might end up with $10,000 or $20,000 in student debt. But we've got this whole new thing. So I think when that bubble bursts, and I'm expecting that that bubble is going to burst in the next couple of years, that it's going to once again bring down the banks. It's going to crash the system. And this time it's not going to be so easy to get out of that crash. And what is either going to come out of it is hyperinflation or rapid and horrible deflation. And it'll spread around the world. And then we'll be back to 1932, 33. And then I think that we're going to see the kind of pressure that has to happen. I mean, the reality is the real simple, and I'm sorry that this is a grim analysis, but you said to be cynical. I'm just trying to be honest. This is what I see. There are things that we can individually do to try and prepare for that and get ready for that, and there's things that culturally we can do to soften the blow, starting with breaking up the big banks. But I don't see that happening, next week. Although there are these little lights like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and Sherrod Brown and stuff like that. But it seems to me that rebooting, that when that rebooting happens, if there are enough of us who remember how it worked the last time, my dad and the GI Bill and the federal home loans and the stuff. I mean, this isn't rocket science. FDR taught us how to do this stuff. We've done it. Sweden did it. They nationalized their banks in 1997. And so, when they crashed, because they had experimented with neoliberalism, and Reagan, Ronald Reagan, 1982, he deregulated the S&Ls. What happened in '86? And then he launches criminal investigations of over 1,000 people and sends 600 of them to jail. And I'm like, I never thought I'd say something good about Ronald Reagan, but it's like, in any case, there are lessons there. So I do have hope for the future. I think it's going to be a difficult time, but I think we're also in a massive difficult time anyway. And we'll see how this all plays out. But the middle class has been, when my dad died, he had equity in his house. People have lost that equity. They've turned their homes into ATMs. He had no credit card debt. People have run up all this huge credit card debt. And now student debt at over $1 trillion is higher than credit card debt ever was. And I remember an era where I was 24 years old when I got my first credit card. And at that point in time, I was running my own business and making more money than my dad. And you still couldn't get a credit card because I was under 25. So it's like, we need to, I'm starting to get redundant. Next question.
And then we're going to get a few of the live questions, but go ahead.
Hi, my question is, what can we do to fix our broken voting system? My request is, I would love to see a debate with you and Brad Friedman.
That wouldn't be a debate.
On, yes, it would. Instant runoff voting. You guys disagree?
Oh, we do?
Yes.
That would be a debate.
Yes.
That would be a debate. Okay, interesting. First of all, I think that we should do what Ireland did, which is sell all their machines for scrap metal.
Yeah.
There was, what was the country that just had, it was Israel, had a vote a couple of days ago, or a week or so ago. And I listened to BBC as I go to sleep at night, and for some reason British accents put me to sleep. I don't mean that as a put down, it's just kind of fixed in my brain. I've done it for so many years. And the guy, and suddenly I woke up, the guy was like, exit polls from Israel show that, what's his name, is not, Netanyahu, thank you, is not, wait until you're over 60 if you're not yet. Anyhow, Netanyahu is not getting the large vote that he got, although he will win. And I'm going, exit polls? And then the guy said, it'll be another 2 or 3 days before all the votes are counted. Oh, really? You're counting paper ballots? Well, I don't actually know. Brad would know. He's the expert on this stuff. But it sure sounded like it to me. And, we used to have exit polls in the United States that were always accurate. And they stopped being accurate when we started getting voting machines. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. And so, on that. With regard to instant runoff voting, however we do it, whether we do it the New Zealand and Australia way, or whether the San Francisco way, or we go to proportional representation, which would require arguably an amendment to the Constitution, although there are ways to do it without amending the Constitution. We need to do something to break up the duopoly. We need to do something to get more than just 2 political parties with a stranglehold over our economy. And Brad, you and I are going to have a conversation about that someday. I'd love to get your thoughts.
We will. We'll have it out.
Cool.
Just questions, brief here. Have you heard the theory that communist Russia, communist China, communist North Korea today were single-party totalitarian state capitalist society based on Marx's writing that called themselves communism?
I would challenge a couple of those assertions. First of all, Russia is not communist any longer. They're more capitalist than we are, more laissez-faire capitalists in many regards.
Well, when they were.
When they were. China arguably is going down that road. And what was the other country you mentioned? North Korea, yeah. And North Korea, I don't think is communist. I think it's just a plain old dictatorship. It's just, it's a cult of the crazy. It's a cult of crazy. Just like Hitler the Nazis were not fascists. It was a death cult. Mussolini was a fascist. Franco was a fascist. Hitler was a death cult. So that would be my take on that. I'm not sure where to go beyond that.
Next question.
Thank you, Thom Hartmann.
I believe that we've got to stop asking for media reform and start demanding media reform, because I don't think we can underestimate the influence the media has on the democratic process and on the justice system. The justice system can't work if the media does not say, hey, these guys need to go to jail. And so I have 3 solutions that I want you to comment on. Okay. First of all, restore the Sherman Antitrust Act to the media. Second, affirmative action in the media, even all the way to the top. Third, class action lawsuit against the media for the destruction of this country. Okay? Basically, because when you have CI Director William Colby being quoted as saying the Central Intelligence Agency owns everyone of any significance in the major media. I mean, we've got to start...
And that was 2 decades ago.
You know, it's got to be worse now. But anyway, so what I'm saying is that we've got to be tougher. We've got to start asking for transparency. We've got to demand media reform from every single candidate. And this is a dangerous thing to be talking about. I mean, Aaron Swartz, what's happened to him. But this is how, you know, when you find out that people came over from Germany, not just the scientists, but the propagandists, and started teaching the CIA how to do things, you know, we've got to start saying, okay, we got to come at it as if there is a conspiracy going on, and deal with it.
Right.
So what do you think about that?
Sure. I think you make some good points, and did I tell my flag parade story a minute ago? Okay. Well, I think this is apropos to your question. No place in the Constitution does this have used the word leader. You know, we have this myth in America that we have leaders. It's nonsense. We don't have leaders in the United States. We have representatives. We have people that we elect, and arguably, and we've already had that conversation. We're not even electing them. The billionaires are, but the fact of the matter is that politicians, and I know a bunch of them. In fact, I had dinner with one last night. He was a pretty good and progressive guy. I shared this comment with him, and he agreed with it, that when the parade is big enough, marching down the street, that's when the politician will jump out in front of it, hoist a flag, and say, "This is my parade." You know, it's really that simple. That's how it works. And if there's no parade, or if it's just a little pissant parade, then no politician is going to take the risk of saying, "That's my parade," because that's not going to get them elected. And by the way, that's not a comment on politicians being spineless, you know, which way is the wind blowing weasels. That's their job definition, is to represent the people. You know, the word representative keeps appearing in the Constitution. That's their job definition. Which means, and this is again not to blame the victims, but rather to empower the victims, which means that we've got to get one hell of a parade going out there on all these issues. And that, you know, we've got to stand up and be the parade. And that's where I was so excited about the Occupy movement early on, is I thought, okay, here comes the parade. You know, here comes the parade. And frankly, I think that there will be another parade. I know that there will be another parade. And I encourage you to participate in creating parades. You know, go to moveToAmend.org and create a local chapter out of your
I've got
house.
spooks after me, man.
Well, that's, you know,
It's fucking weird.
yeah, you know, but, you know, fuck them if they can't take a joke. You know, it's
I mean, like, showing up places.
yeah, no, I get it. And, you know, don't do anything illegal, I guess, is the best advice on that. But, you know, go to Progressive Democrats of America, PD America. They're not associated with the Democratic Party at all. It's an inside-outside game. It's Jim Carpenter's organization, and they're doing just great work. There's a lot of really good organizations, and if you don't find one that really resonates with you, start one. But we need a friggin' parade, and we need everybody in the parade. We need people my age. We need people middle age. We need kids, young people in the parade. We need to get the parade going. That's our job.
This gentleman, then we'll go back to the field here, and we've got about 16 more minutes before we're going to go to a book signing, okay? The book signing phase of the day.
Yes, Tom, thank you for coming to Southern California. The last time I was able to talk to you and give you a question was when you were in Ventura. So I have driven down here from Ventura.
Thank you, sir.
Just
Bless you.
just to ask you about this gate event over at the Saban Theater. I just wanted to find out if you could just give a short promo on what you're going to be talking about and what time you'll be there, to see if I can get over there and talk to you.
My understanding of the gate event is that it is people largely in the entertainment industry who are trying to transform the world, and they're trying to get those people together and help them change the world. And and I was invited to speak. I don't know a whole lot about it. I had the founder on the program for a 6-minute segment. Louise and I, my wife and I, back in 1978, started a community for abused kids in New Hampshire, and which is still there. And we started a school. Then there was a part of that, the New England Salem Children's Village, and then the Hunter School. And what I'm speaking about tonight, and it's going to be relatively brief. Is that Richard? In fact, there's Richard Green, a former Air America host who is on the board of directors of the Hunter School.
Hey, Richard.
So he can probably tell you more about it than me. But the people from the Hunter School were invited to participate in this, and they were invited to drag me along because they thought my name would, be more visible. So I was told today that I'm scheduled to speak around 10 to 10:30 tonight, and that I'll be talking for 10 or 15 minutes, and I'm going to be talking basically about consciousness in kids and changing the world. So that's it. Thank you for asking.
Where is this now?
This is at the Saban Theater. Richard, do you have the
Theater.
Saban Theater.
On Wilshire near La Cienega.
On Wilshire near La Cienega, and there is an admission charge. I don't know how much it is, but
$500.
no, it's not $500.
I see 5 hands who are very urgent, and we're going to go, gentlemen, these 3, and then that guy, and go from there. And let's try to be brief, because we've got 15 minutes.
Yes, I'm going to pick up a little bit on what Lila said and what you alluded to. The corporatization of America and the Second Gilded Age are the results of bipartisan efforts. And in some ways, Obama is leading us beyond corporatocracy towards a police state. Okay? I mean, he's getting a lot of help. What I don't understand, I watch MSNBC, why aren't the so-called lefties on the corporate media speaking out and criticizing the Democrats as well as the Republicans? And to a degree, I read your newsletter. I haven't been watching your show or listening to it lately. You seem to be doing the same thing. You see no criticism on foreign policy, the drone attacks, Iran, except to support it. And all this stuff also, a lot of the stuff they're talking about is a diversion from the advancing, corporatization of America. And we're moving beyond corporatocracy, and I just, on a personal level, what is going on with these lefty progressive talkers, and why don't they?
They want to keep the
First of all, with regard to my own show, I'm not, the newsletter has we take one of our news stories each day, and that becomes the blog for the show, or for the newsletter. So, if I haven't talked about drones, if it wasn't our top story, my apologies. I talk about drones constantly. Anybody who watches the show or listens to the show knows that I am kicking the president upside the head, metaphorically. I think that it is a war crime. I think that it is a violation of our Constitution. In 1988, here's the statement, and I made this the other day in a debate with some right-winger. I said that, George Herbert Walker Bush was responsible for 9/11. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? And I said, well, let's just assume the official story is right for a moment. George Herbert Walker Bush invaded Kuwait. In order to do that, he had to have an Air Force base in Saudi Arabia. He built an Air Force base in Saudi Arabia. Osama bin Laden, according to his own article in the New York Times in 1998, said, wait a minute, Saudi soil is sacred. This is the home of Islam. You should not have women showing their elbows and driving cars and men drinking alcohol and looking at girly magazines. It is a sacrilege. If you don't get that Air Force base out of Saudi Arabia and you don't stop draining the natural resources of our country and start paying at least $100 a barrel for oil, because the price of oil at that time was $28 a barrel, then I'm going to come get you, he said. And we didn't, right? We left the Air Force base there and we kept buying the cheap oil. And he got us, arguably. I mean, that's a whole other topic. But and so you could say that had George Herbert Walker Bush never done that, 9/11 never would have happened. In other words, it was blowback. And so when we get to drones, I mean, that was just, Osama bin Laden, it was a small band of pissed off people. And just imagine somebody who's had their family blown apart because the guy next door was a bad guy. I mean, the story I had actually, during the campaign, the White House was throwing surrogates at me, and I had one of the guys in the press office on, one of the fairly high-placed people in the press office, and I just asked him, just blunt, straight out, I said, if Mexico got really upset about the fact that they've had like, what, 35,000 people killed in the last year or two because of our idiotic drug policies. And they said, you know, you got drug lords going up to Phoenix, Arizona to buy, you know, AK-47s and stuff and bringing drugs into the country. And Mexico knows where they are. And so they just sent a drone over Phoenix one day and just dropped a bomb down, took out a couple city blocks, killed a drug lord. Hey, cool. How do you think we'd react? How would we react if Canada said, you know, your country has been taken over by a madman, that George Bush, he's a fanatic, he's got weapons of mass destruction. We're going to invade your damn country. How would we react? And you know, of course I got shocked silence in the White House, but the point is that we don't yet, I mean, we now know, or at least, you know, if we accept that story, we now know what the blowback to the first Iraq war was. It was 9/11. We don't know what the blowback to the drones are, and it may not be. It may be 20 years before we know. It might be 3 generations before we know, but it's absolutely freaking insane. So I'm absolutely with you on that. With regard to my colleagues in other media, I can't speak to that. You know, we don't have a club where we get together. The one thing I can tell you is that I think virtually all of them are employees of their corporations, and I'm not. I own my own show. We started the show in our living room in Vermont back in 2002. And I own the radio show, I own the TV show that's on RT. People say, hey, it's on RT, that's the Russian network. I actually own the show, 100% of the show. We have 100% control over the editorial content. We license it to them. We also license it to Free Speech TV. And you know, if the day comes that they get tired of my talking like this, they can take me off the air, but I'm not changing my tune. And so I think we need more of that.
There's some serendipity going on because
I'll
I
try to be
live.
brief too.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I live in Santa Clarita, which I always typify as the Orange County of Los Angeles. And my esteemed congressman is Buck McKeon. And we recently had a very freakish election in a part of Santa Clarita and Antelope Valley where a unknown Democrat won. It was just a freaky thing. Well, yesterday I opened up one of the things in all of the constant news feeds that I have, and here he is at the state legislature calling for that California be named the one of the drone producing states in the world. Now, of course, this is because he's got all those Air Force bases and all of the military and all of the Lockheed and all of that stuff out there, and he wants jobs. So my question to you, and because I've read everything you've ever written, I really respect you so much. How much the military-industrial complex is pivotal to the corporatization of the world? That they are not there for us. They are there for the corporations to exploit and plunder the resources and make sure that we get them before our corporation gets them, before somebody else gets them. So how do we really begin in a thoughtful way to turn swords into plowshares, given the fact that we're at a point of economic and environmental collapse? So that's my question.
You know, when I got dragged off to jail in 1968, it was because there were a whole lot of us who did, and it was because we knew that our government was trying to kill us. You know? So I think a nice starting point, and I love Charlie Rangel, regardless of his real estate deals. I get him on the show a lot because he wants to bring back the draft. I think, you know, if we had the draft, we wouldn't have had the first Afghanistan war, the second Afghanistan war, or Iraq war rather, the Afghanistan. We wouldn't have had any of that. And we should do it the way that Germany did, at least when I lived there in '86. I spent a year there. I don't know if they still do this, which was after high school, you give a year of service. It doesn't have to be in the military. I worked with an international relief organization. We had a bunch of people there who were there. You could work for any nonprofit organization for a year, and at the end of that year, you get a free college education or trade school education. That's the trade-off. And it is a catapulting into adulthood. We actually need these transitions. We have the remnants of them from when we were a little more tribal in nature, the bar mitzvah, the confirmation. It's a catapult